So one of the reasons why the PlayStation Portable store was shut down was because Sony felt like the limitations of the hardware, the limitations of the technology, wouldn't allow them to adequately protect their network. It's not the main reason that they shut down the PlayStation Portable store, but it was a factor. And it's true, as we upgrade technology, as we improve internet speeds, as we improve how we connect to the World Wide Web, as we improve, and by we, I mean companies in general, right? As these things improve and as companies develop more enhanced safety protocols for protecting their customers when they're utilizing their online platforms, it becomes difficult to maintain that, and I guess for lack of better terms, retrofit that to older consoles. And so that was definitely a factor as to why the PlayStation Portable store was completely shut down in 2021. And I think for the most part, while yes, there was a community that was sad about seeing that network get shut down, it was not nearly as disruptive as when Sony announced that they would be shutting down the PlayStation 3 and Vita networks. Now, that was a situation that garnered a lot of attention from the gaming community. Now, of course, we know that much like in the case of the PSP, Sony just was not interested in maintaining those servers, maintaining those online platforms because they weren't reaping the rewards of maintaining that. Sony wanted to focus more on their more current generations, their PlayStation 4 and 5. They wanted to make sure that they were putting all of their efforts towards that. And they kind of wanted to discontinue the Vita support and the PlayStation 3 support. But I think they underestimated how many customers were still heavily playing their PlayStation 3s and their PlayStation Vitas. And there was generally an outcry from the community about 4 years ago with regards to Sony's decision to shut these networks down. And so that backlash caused them to do pretty much a course correction, or really a course reversal, so to speak. And they decided that they were no longer going to shut down the PS3 platform, online platforms, or the Vita platforms. And those platforms are still alive and kicking and active today, which I'm sure many gamers are appreciative of. But a lot of the reasons for them deciding not to shut it down was simply because of uh, the response that they got from the customer base and from the gaming community. But my question today is, how long will that be enough? How long will the gaming community be able to hold back Sony's hand from shutting these networks down? And will we get to a point where it's no longer safe for Sony to maintain the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita platforms? Now, I don't really see, and I honestly, I don't see them shutting the PlayStation 3 or Vita networks down anytime soon. And I think that's very encouraging for a lot of people who still play their PlayStation 3, who still play their Vita pretty heavily. I think that's a very encouraging notion for them because at least they know that they still have somewhat of a runway to enjoy these consoles. And especially when you consider, the preservation community, people who have games, who still, download digital content. I did a video the other day where I showcased some of the more recent PlayStation 3 games that I picked up so far this year. And I had a lot of people making recommendations for me to connect to the PlayStation 3 network online to take advantage of some of the features for some of the games that I wound up picking up. But will there come a point where the technology will not support keeping the PlayStation 3 up and running, keeping these networks up and running? And what will that ultimately do to the PlayStation 3 market? Now, a lot of people speculate on this idea, and we kind of saw what happened when Sony announced that they were going to be shutting the PS3 network down 4 years ago. Obviously, it caused a temporary spike in the prices of certain games, which is typically going to happen whenever we hear that we're losing the digital version of anything. It happened with Nintendo when they shut down certain platforms. It obviously happened with Microsoft when they shut down certain online platforms. We saw game prices spike, but in a lot of instances, we did also see these game prices kind of drop back down to earth because there isn't a mass, in terms of just the general public, there isn't a mass desire to preserve a lot of these games. It's really the gaming community that really has a deep desire to preserve a lot of these games. It's really the gaming community that wants to keep these games alive. And so what history has shown is that the gaming community is not enough to keep the prices of some of these games propped up at extremely high levels. But there will always be exceptions to the rule. There will always be certain games that maintain a higher value just because the game itself is either very fun, very sought after, or a game that, once the store shuts down, there's really no alternate way to play that game outside of emulation or anything like that. And so that's where my mind has been, not only with the PlayStation 3, but also with the PS Vita, because the PS Vita was also a part of those plans to kind of shut down their network. Now, a lot of people still use the PlayStation 3 to download classic games like PlayStation 1 games, and the same thing with the PlayStation Vita. A lot of the more rare and expensive PlayStation 1 titles that I just can't afford, I've actually downloaded to my PlayStation Vita, including games like Klonoa and Misadventures of Tron Bonne. I actually went looking for Tail Concerto, but I don't think I saw it when I went on the online store. So I'm going to see if I can find Tail Concerto the next time I'm on the online platform. But these are honestly the easier ways to play these games, because a lot of these games are very, very expensive trying to get them in their physical form in terms of these PlayStation 1 games. So removing some of these platforms essentially kind of takes gamers away from not only the PS3 library, but also the PS2 digital library and the PlayStation 1 library in some cases. So again, it's very interesting to me. Here we are 4 years later, it's still up and running. Do we see these platforms staying alive for another 10 years? Will we see these platforms alive and running once the PlayStation 6 comes out? It's hard for me to see that being the case. And if not, what then will happen to the price of these games? Will we see them inflate back up again? And if they do, will they come back down? I think the moral of the story here for me is, if you are a collection type of person, if you are a collector, if you are a preservationist, I say get the games that you want now while they're cheap. Most people still aren't really paying a ton of attention to the PlayStation 3, and people have honestly kind of started to back off of the 360 as well. And so 7th generation games have kind of settled back into their place of not obscurity, but just you'll see a lot of these games sitting on the shelf a lot longer than you would, even PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 or anything older. You'll see these games sitting on the shelf a lot longer. So my recommendation is take advantage while you can, because I don't know how safe we are, and I don't know if we will get to a point where the technology just won't support keeping these platforms alive. But I'm interested to know your thoughts on this. Let me know down in the comments, do you think the PlayStation 3 will be viable for another 10 years as far as their online platforms go? Let me know, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.